Welcome. It's January 31st, 2025. It's the last day of the first month of the year. Let's review our tickers. The market is trying to tell us something. What is it trying to tell us? Let's review the tickers. We'll start with SPY as we always do. Let's start with the weekly chart. So, if you remember my last update a few weeks back at this point, we talked about, it was just the market was just the year was just starting and we were trying to reverse higher. And we ended up actually coming back and making a lower low, but then essentially these two candles on the weekly chart are a compound bullish outside candle of these two, right? Like notice it makes a lower low, so undercuts, and then the next week it kind of finishes the deal. We kind of did the same thing this week, right? Like notice the same pattern, right? We undercut the low, but now we went green. So in other words, this was a red candle at one point. Then it closed solid green. Same thing. This was red, the whole DeepSeek thing, the Monday meltdown with Nvidia, etc. And so I doubt we're going to get a full bullish outside candle today. We probably get continuation next week. So like you imagine next week's candle looks something like that. So then you have kind of the same pattern. All that to say, I think we're heading back to new all-time highs. We're recording this just before the market is opening on a Friday. Happy Friday, by the way. And the bigger picture is this appears to be week 2 of a new weekly cycle. Let's think about how these cycles have unfolded. And like if you go back to the bottom back in October 2022, back here, right? You had this one cycle that rallied for 16 weeks and then a relatively short decline. Another cycle rallied for 19 weeks. Actually, a bit of a longer decline, like 13 weeks, right? Like this was kind of painful. And then you rallied for 22 weeks. You declined for just 3 weeks. Then you rallied for 13 weeks. This was a pretty deep retracement, but still didn't last very long in time. And then we rallied for 17 weeks, and then it seems like we bottomed on week 23, so only a 5-week decline. All that to say, at some point, we're going to get something like this, like a left translated cycle, rallied for 9 weeks and then declines for, 11, or no, actually, that is not quite left translated, but at least the decline is closer to the rally. So the point being, it's only week 2, so we could still see several weeks of upside, but wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being the left translated weekly cycle. We don't want to predict that. It's something that we want to watch for, especially since, keep in mind, we're pretty deep in this rally here, right? Like we've been rallying for, what is that? So this is month 27, actually. Oh, wow. So we're pretty deep in this rally since that bottom back in October 2022. And so at some point, we're going to see some kind of multi-month decline, or at the very least, some kind of multi-month consolidation. That would be the expectation. But for now, we appear to be on day 12 of a new daily cycle. And more importantly, just like micro price action, we had our Fed meeting on Wednesday. This is our Wednesday candle. Notice the Wednesday candle didn't make a higher high relative to the previous day and also didn't make a lower low, which is to say not much actually happened on FOMC day, right? Like we just stayed inside the range. And then what did we do yesterday? We flushed lower. This was a red candle at one point, kind of ugly. And then we kind of ended up as kind of a doji, but poking out to make a little higher high above here. This pattern, if you're familiar with the strat, if you're not, look it up, put it into ChatGPT. It can give you all the details. Really powerful strategy. It's kind of incorporated into what I do. But like this is an inside candle, and now we're kind of resolving higher. In the strat, this is called a 2-1-2. This is a 2 up because we made a higher high here, and now we consolidated and we're moving up. All that to say, short term, again, you would think we're at least going to test this level here, like at least retest those all-time highs. Maybe we get, maybe we get some resistance up there. That we'll have to see. But in terms of like where I would put a stop, below 600, give it a little room, but that would be your sort of risk point, right? Like just call it like right here. That's on SPY. But again, I think we're early in the new weekly cycle. So again, that's why you want to make sure you're giving yourself some room for that upside. All right, let's move on. We'll go quicker now. QQQ, because it's all a very similar pattern. So all a similar thing. This one made an even deeper lower low on the weekly, but still, again, on track for a compound bullish outside candle on the weekly chart. Very exciting stuff. Obviously, we'll see how we trade Friday. There's still a lot of trading to happen. In terms of this one, you want to watch for 518, call it, in that neighborhood. How about the Dow, DIA? So this one looks really strong. This one's already almost back to all-time highs, right? Like this guy, all-time high 450, and we're like a hair away. So this one is leading. The Dow is leading. You're very clearly this was your weekly cycle low because we made a slight lower low. So again, very, very early in the new weekly cycle. SMH looks really interesting. I mean, this is one of those charts that looks wild. So we had that big gap down because of NVIDIA on Monday. Look at that. Look at that. This is your Friday candle. This is your Monday candle. Gigantic gap. So what is the high here? 245. So a $15 gap on this thing. And what are we doing today? We are entering the gap, my friends. What do we think happens from here? I'm not saying we get one gigantic candle that takes us back here. That would be pretty nice. But my guess is, it takes us a few candles. Maybe there's even some consolidation here. But I believe we're going to work our way back up here. Now, this will become the moment of truth, that 260 level. But nice upside from here. And again, bigger picture. Look at the chart on this thing. I mean, you don't see a chart that looks like this very often. Like, this is crazy. At some point, when this thing resolves, it's going to freaking blow. Like, that's the exciting part. You just have to be patient. And again, look at this weekly chart. That big gap, because it happened on a Monday, creates a huge gap on the weekly. This is just really, really interesting stuff, like price action wise, if you really understand the intricacies. So let's move on to Dixie. What's Dixie doing? So Dixie looks like it just made a daily cycle low back on Monday, right? That was with the market, when the market kind of had a little tantrum. And we're now on day 4. Yet at the same time, this is so far kind of a little bit of a bear flag. And the more important signal is what's happening on the weekly. So we were expecting a left translated cycle on the weekly. We did not get that. We rallied for 16 weeks, right? So we got the top back on the week of January 13th. So my suspicion is we're in the weekly cycle decline now. Now, is this our weekly cycle low on weeks 18? It's possible. It's totally possible. I think more likely this forms some kind of lower high here, and then we go back and make a lower low to complete the weekly cycle decline. Again, I try not to predict markets. That would be my expectation. I'm going to watch the price action unfold to see if that plays out. The US 10-year, very similar pattern. So in this case, topped out on week 17. It's now week 19. Maybe in this case, it's like this does not look like it's bottomed at all, because we're still red on the week, for example. And look at this daily cycle. This does not look like the dollar, the Dixie is bouncing. It's rallying in its daily cycle, and this is still declining very clearly. This thing, let's just put some numbers to this thing. So this thing rallied for 25 days, and we're now on day 37. So could see quite a bit more downside considering how long this rally is, and it really hasn't retraced a whole lot of it. Well, I mean, let's just really quickly see what that would be. So that's 0.67. So if we'd have to go down like 0.34. Okay, so we've already hit the 50% retracement on this thing, actually. So that's interesting. We'll see. Definitely could be a bounce zone here. Could consolidate a little bit more. Doesn't have to drop. But I mean, man, this looks like a bear flag looking to take a trip lower. It's just what my gut tells me. Okay, so that's the Dixie. Oil has just been kind of a straight line down, just lower low, lower low. That was a little inside day. Lower low, inside day, lower low. On the weekly, this appears to be some kind of ugly weekly cycle top, and we just started the weekly cycle decline. But we've really just been consolidating inside this gigantic range. So right now, it looks like the odds are we're trying to make a move down to the bottom of this range. Does it mean we're going to collapse, right? In fact, I expect we continue to kind of slosh around down there. We don't even have to make it all the way to the bottom, obviously. What about TLT? So that's going to be obviously inversely correlated with the 10-year. So this one is important. We had this really long decline. It looked like we had a weekly cycle low on week 30, which maybe we did. But if we did, that means we're still in the midst of a new weekly cycle decline. It's week 10. This weekly cycle topped out on week 2. That's what we're kind of watching for. The other alternative is that this is actually your weekly cycle low instead of this. It really doesn't matter in a lot of senses. On a weekly time frame, you need to stay above 87.63. And if we look at the daily, I would say you got to stay above that cluster of lows, 87.40. TBT is going to be doing the opposite. So that started a little daily, we formed a little swing high on the weekly. So we've got to get back above that. So we've got to get back above 36.66 roughly. All right, let's move on to Bitcoin. How's Bitcoin looking? So, and crypto, we'll look at ETH after. Let's look at the weekly because we talked about this in the last update. We had a pretty big move on the weekly. We needed to consolidate it, right? Like, look at this nice little stair step up. This is still a gigantic bull flag, call it a flag, of this move here. Still just not much happening. Consolidation for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks now. So I say that leans bullish. That, again, thinking about big picture, 4-year cycle. I mean, look at this monthly chart. This is a thing of beauty. Again, reminder, this was your low. This was your low. Very obvious in hindsight, but we've been talking about it, I've been talking about it on X, YouTube channel, etc. This is only week 26, month 26. Previous cycle topped out on like month 35 or something like that. Doesn't mean they have to repeat the same kind of pattern, the same exact numbers, but look at this monthly chart. Like that, the big picture here is we left behind this higher low, so at 89,000. That's obviously quite a bit lower than where we are now, but that's your clear signal. Just like we left behind this cluster of lows, then moved up. Now we just have to give this thing time for this consolidation to resolve. And if we look at ETH, it's been lagging Bitcoin and it continues to lag. So on ETH, right, that higher low we're leaving behind is around right under 3,000. And you can see it actually undercut the low, whereas Bitcoin did not. Again, I think this thing is going to get back to its all-time high at 4,800. It's just a matter of patience and just like more immediate. We have a nice little swing low here, right? Once we crossed above there. So above 3253 gives us a nice little swing. That gives you an area to put your stop for your risk. That's ETH. All right, we're going to close out with precious metals. So gold is looking strong here. But I will say the weekly cycles are they're not obvious. And I think looking at gold, silver, and GDX makes it more clear where we are. So actually, we'll look at GDX first. So GDX, gold miners, look at this. We'll go back to, looking at the weekly chart, right? We had this top here on week 18, and then this decline for about 10 weeks into week 28, which was the week of the December 30th. So the last week of the year, first week of this year. And then we've been rallying ever since. So we're basically in week 4 of a new weekly cycle. This looks really clean. Look at this nice, clean weekly candle. Looks poised to go and retest this high here. Now that's the week of the 30th. Look at the gold chart. The week of the 30th the week of December 30th does not make a clear lower low, which is actually a sign of strength, right? This is the week of the 30th, right? This is a higher low than this low here back on week 23. So in reality, this is probably your weekly cycle low. So that's on week 30, which is actually like what you would expect in terms of timing band. And again, this is an important signal. Like it couldn't even make a lower low. That means the buyers stepped in and we're now on week 4. So this is a good example where we can look at correlated markets to kind of get a sense of where quote unquote cycles might be. And silver, same exact thing. Week of the 30th, right here. So It topped out on week 11. Let's just see here. That's your low there on week of the 30th. Yep. So that's week 21. Not, usually have a longer cycles for silver, like 27, 28, 25 weeks. But, the bottom could come at any time. Again, week 4, this has been a little bit choppier, but look at this. Look at this candle that cleaned out. Man, I can only imagine how many people were stopped out around here. Again, week 4, early in the new weekly cycle. And if we look at GDX, it gives us a cleaner look at the daily cycle. This is day 20. So we're not early in the daily cycle by any means, but we do appear to be relatively early in the weekly cycle. So that's important. And things like platinum are working now, and palladium as well. Similar kind of deal. So for gold, just to be clear about where I would say this thing needs to stay above 2770. And for silver, at this point, well, this candle right today is just an inside candle so far, and we had a little bit of a flush, so this actually might be a good entry right here. Again, we're doing this right before market opens, so right around 31 is your risk point on silver. And natural gas. Let's look at natural gas last. At the time we looked at natural gas, we were beginning what we thought was a weekly cycle decline. That was like right around here. Look at this big ugly candle. We ended up having an inside candle the next week, and then we actually did make a higher high. But at the end of the day, we came back and made a lower low. So it ended up that this wasn't the top, but this was, right? So kind of semantics. You ended up with kind of a double top in some ways. So we're now just 2 weeks into the weekly cycle decline. Certainly not a time to step in. And if you look at the daily cycle, we're still kind of early in that decline as well. It's only been, what is that, 5? It's like 10 days after this top here. Again, we thought this was the top. It looked like it was. Came back, gave us a little rally, but then just kind of fizzled out. And your big warning is once you broke below that low there, right? Like once you broke below this low, and we closed below that yesterday. So I'd watch that. Watch that for a false breakdown, right? So that 338 level is going to be important. We're actually here at 340. Wait, over here at 331, I think. So watch that 338 level on natural gas. So that's all we've got for today. Thanks for watching.